Located on Clancy Strand in Limerick's city centre, the Limerick House of Industry has immense significance in Irish history. The Limerick House of Industry was erected in 1774 to improve social conditions in a poverty-stricken city. As time progressed, however, this institution took on a variety of different roles, including historical and political functions. The building's prime location on the River Shannon is steeped in historical importance, as it meant the control over surrounding counties over the course of 2 centuries. And during the Irish Civil War, for example, the Limerick House of Industry was converted into a barracks and was used to exert authority and control over Limerick City. This documentary will explore the Limerick House of Industry's rich history and will highlight its social, historical and political significance from 1774 to 2017. The Limerick House of Industry's history begins with Ireland's workhouse culture in pre-famine and famine times. The introduction of this House of Industry, and more like it, began with the legislative union between Ireland and Britain. Described by many as something like hospitals, something like prisons, or something like courthouses, the workhouse embodied British rule and characterised oppressive times. In the 18th century, Ireland's poor economic climate made it very difficult for the government at the time to pay for the erection of these houses throughout the country. Most of these facilities were constructed through donations from people in the Irish hierarchy at the time. The donation that we are most interested in is that of Archbishop Gore of Limerick, who donated his land in the north of Clancy Strand for the construction of the Limerick House of Industry. Houses like this one in Limerick were originally built as asylums for deserted children under the age of 8 and the mentally ill. During their initiation, only the higher classes in society could afford the entry fee. After some time, however, the houses of industry began to accept the poorer tiers in society. The Limerick House of Industry was no exception to this rule of thumb. When the onset of the famine occurred, there was a heightened demand on these workhouses. Families with little to nothing in Limerick saw it as a place where they would find food and shelter when the crops had failed. The Limerick House of Industry evolved over the century from an asylum for mentally ill to a workhouse for those suffering the effects of pauperism. When looking at the social conditions prevalent in Limerick City during the 18th century, it is easy to understand why people magnated towards the Limerick House of Industry. By early 1800, a sharp divide between rich and poor was identifiable in Limerick City. When the town walls were torn down in the 1760s, those who had financial security began to relocate from Irish Town and English Town, collectively known as Old Town, to new developments in the Newtown Perry districts of the city. In the poorer region of Old Town, social conditions were appalling. These conditions were epitomised by journalist Henry David Inglis on his travels to Limerick City in 1834. He wrote, "I spent a day in visiting those parts of Limerick City where the greatest destitution and misery were said to exist. I entered upwards of 40 of the abodes of poverty, and to my latest existence I can never forget the utter hopeless wretchedness that presented themselves. Health and welfare conditions were also extremely primitive, with child mortality rates at an excessive high in the city. After addressing these harrowing living conditions in the 18th and 19th century in Limerick, it is easy to understand why the Limerick House of Industry saw an influx of people seeking refuge inside its walls." The Limerick House of Industry possessed more than just a charitable function, however. Its location in Limerick City is also of great historical significance. The Limerick House of Industry was located along the banks of the River Shannon. As a result, this meant the location of the building was important for several reasons. Firstly, the river had many uses between the period of 1700 and 1935. The Shannon provided a corridor for the importation of goods such as food and water into the city, and also allowed for the transportation of the same resources to the Limerick House of Industry itself. Additionally, in its early days, the Limerick House of Industry separated both Irish Town and English Town, and this would prove to be an influential sociological factor within the city. English Town was initially an area of Limerick where the wealthy residents resided, while Irish Town was an area where the poor and homeless lived. The location of the Limerick House of Industry in this sense was vitally significant, as it meant the wealthy people of Limerick would never have to interact with the poor residents of Irish Town. Essentially, the location of the building during its early years was very significant, as it provided a unique and strong border of separation for different classes in Limerick City. The final significant importance of the Limerick House of Industry is a political one. The Limerick House of Industry played an influential role throughout the Irish Civil War after the political formation of the Irish Free State. The barracks, as it was now referred to in Limerick, was bombarded by Free State troops attempting to regain control of the site during a tumultuous period. And on the 20th of July 1922, the Republican forces surrendered their control of the complex. The former House of Industry was extremely significant to Irish politics, as it was the only barracks on the Clare side of the River Shannon. Interestingly, it was also the barracks to take the most punishment from the Free State, and was the barracks that put up the stiffest resistance. Undoubtedly, the building is rich in history and played a significant role throughout a period in Irish history that was characterised by political conflicts and social unrest. It must be noted finally that the building now, in 2017, poses a residential function in Limerick's CBD. In summary, the Limerick House of Industry is an incredibly important institution in the history of Limerick City. The house stood through some of Ireland's most challenging periods and executed a wide variety of functions. Its significance can be seen in the social requirements of famine times, the political requirements of turbulent political times, and the historical requirements of a time before modern advancements. Overall, the Limerick House of Industry is an establishment that is steeped not only in local Limerick history, but in Irish history as a whole.